Yes, this is the top of the hour. Brothers and sisters, ready or not, here we come. It's time for the Bean Soup Radio Show with me, Toure, and the wonderful
Laila Muhammad.
We are pleased to be here on Intellectual Radio, the place for intelligent conversation. Get ready to get your brain fed right now because we have a powerhouse show. Join the conversation on social media. Use the hashtag Bean Soup Radio or just go to the Bean Soup Times page and talk to us.
Right. So welcome family. We have an awesome show. We're going to do the Bean Soup Foodie Challenge. We have a great guest in the show today. But right now we're going to start off by saying how it's been such a busy week in the news. For example, just one day after Sandra Bland, a young 18-year-old woman named Kendra Darnell Chapman, she died Tuesday, July 14th of apparent suicide in a jail cell while in custody, at the Homewood, Alabama police station. And according to AL.com, the 18-year-old was found unresponsive with a bed sheet tied around her neck. And according to police officials, after being arrested and booked on a first-degree robbery charge.
It's absolutely incredible, and it's so unfortunate and heart-wrenching and gut-wrenching. And she's not the only one. You have Raukina Jones, a Cleveland mother. July 26th, mysteriously died while in jail. She was arrested. The family talked to her on Saturday, but Sunday she's found dead, and no one has any real answers.
Right, that's the second one. How many more sisters are gonna go through this? And it's not like it's a new phenomenon. It's just that with the advent of social media, now we're able to see and everything is broadcasted. Even in New York, top prosecutor, he said he's going to investigate the death of a 42-year-old black mother of 8 while in police custody on shoplifting charges. State officials said on Monday, her name is Raynette Turner, and she was found unresponsive in her holding cell on July 27, 2 days after she was arrested on suspicion of stealing crab legs from a supermarket in Mount Vernon, a city on the border of the Bronx borough.
It is so horrible, and it used to be that we really had so much concern for the men, the brothers, the young men.
Right.
But today, the black woman is under siege as well. So these are 3 different incidents, and I heard there was one more, Joyce Cornell. We're trying to find the information about her in Charleston County. So along with Sandra Bland. So our women are being found dead in these prisons throughout the country, and we need answers, and we need justice. Or else. That's right. We just right. Do. You know what? And I only laugh because of the pause in between. I was waiting for the punchline, but it's not a laughing matter at all. It's really serious business when we see so many people dying in police custody. And we could go on and talk about this, but of course, we know it's 2 fronts.
Right.
We know we have to work at home to not have black on black, brown on brown on black violence, and we know we have to work to ensure that we are not being mistreated by law enforcement and white racist supremacists throughout this country.
Right, that's right.
So, it is so much going on in the news. So we're gonna shift from that just a little bit, but I'm gonna close it with just one piece about this type of news. I'm gonna say something to the brothers, as we as men, if we, and this is straight from the spirit and the message that I'm hearing from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, if we cannot protect our women and children, then we are not worthy of their company.
Right.
We're not worthy for them to be a part of our lives if we can't protect them. And it's time for us to protect our women.
Right. And just 3 hours ago, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan tweeted that women are the key. You mean everything to our struggle. That's a direct quote from him.
That's
so it
right.
tells about the importance of, the female in the struggle.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to tell you something, Laila Muhammad. I'll jump in front of a bullet for you.
Right. You know, black men fight concrete for the black woman.
Man, chew up concrete and man, just tear up the earth because
Right.
you are very important and special to
Right.
us.
And it's I find it so amazing, and Minister Louis Farrakhan has been talking about it. What type of men or people are we when we seeing this type of abuses going on? We will sit back and pull out a cell phone or record, but we won't even jump in.
Right,
You know,
right.
that's it's
That's
ridiculous.
unacceptable.
It's unfathomable to me.
That's right. It's unacceptable. But look, we're gonna switch gears for a quick minute because I really want to thank. We have a wonderful sponsor today who is helping to make sure this show is possible. And not only does he have the best ice cream this side of Pluto? I haven't been farther than Pluto yet, so you know, once I get past Pluto, I'll be able to verify the rest of the universe. But we're thankful for Sean Michelle's homemade ice cream for being a sponsor of the show. His new shop is located 3343 North Broadway,
Right.
and you have to get there. You have to get by the shop. He has all type of new flavors, but we're gonna talk to him in just a few seconds. But I want to really appreciate and thank him for being a part of the show.
Yeah.
So, you know what? As a matter of fact, we need to hear from him right now because my mouth is watering thinking about his ice cream. So let's hear about. We did a quick interview with our brother Yahya Muhammad from Sean Michelle's homemade old-fashioned ice cream.
Talk to you today or introduce to you to some, to reintroduce to others, a phenomenal, incredible brother who does amazing stuff in business. You all know how we love to have good food, and this brother provides the very best ice cream this side of Pluto. He is the incredible Yahya Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, sir.
Man, how are you doing, brother?
Oh, absolutely wonderful. Absolutely.
Man, well, it's a pleasure, man, to talk to you and to share some information to our listeners about what you do. And, of course, if people have not heard of Sean Michelle's homemade old-fashioned ice cream, then I don't know where you are. You must not be in Chicago. But people have been talking for years. I know you've been on Chicago's Best. You've been on the Hungry Hound is featured. You've been recognized by all different types of mainstream and local publications for having, if not the best, one of the best ice cream spots in the city. And of course, that's their opinion. I already said what I believe. The best this side of Pluto, and I just haven't gotten to Pluto yet.
Yes,
beyond Pluto. So I only go with what I know.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Man, but what inspired, brother, this love for ice cream?
Man, that's a very, very beautiful question, and I'm going to tell you exactly what inspired my love for ice cream. Of course, when I was young, I played Little League Baseball, which you already know because we played together.
Right.
And one day we had practice over in Everline Park. And it was an older woman who was sitting on a bench right behind the baseball diamond. And as soon as we finished practice, she had an old white bucket. And inside of this white bucket, it was some homemade ice cream. It wasn't even hard. I mean, but the flavor, the taste was so delicious. I never, ever forget that experience. And, what's amazing is that I always wanted to re-experience that flavor from that very day, and oddly enough, I hadn't had that flavor again until I went away to college. I was down at Western Illinois University working on my master's degree, and I decided to go out and purchase me an old homemade ice cream machine. And I started experimenting. I figured I'd use my fraternity brothers as guinea pigs, right? And so I just started making it. I just started thinking of flavors that I enjoyed. And I just started putting them together. And believe me, it took a long time to get to the point where it was edible. It took years, as a matter of fact. But it was that experience that I had in Everline Park. having that homemade goodness, the kind of stuff that we used to have in our community, that inspired my love, my passion for homemade ice cream. And I just want to share with others what I love for myself.
Man, that is beautiful. And, of course, I've tasted the original, the what we all remember from a child, that homemade ice cream, that vanilla that you make, which is so delicious. But you also have, just exploded with all types of flavors. And, every time I talk to you, you have some more exciting new flavors. So what exciting new flavors do you have now?
Well, I tell you, actually, the flavors that we're offering at the new location is just an extension of the decadent gourmet flavors that we had in our creation line on 119th and Western Avenue. Over there, we had a specialty creation line where we would mix different perfect combinations together and offer it to our customers. And so what we did, we just brought back what we used to do. And so just to say a few of them, for example, we brought back the Harmony, which is our silky smooth chocolate ice cream, of course, with a dark chocolate fudge cookies inside of it, of caramel and a real pleasant crunch. We also brought back our chocolate mint cookies and cream. Some people like to refer to it as peppermint patty. We also had the chocolate turtle, of course, as you can imagine, a blend of our silky smooth chocolate ice cream, also some caramel and our wonderful sweet Georgian pecans. We also brought back the chocolate fudge brownie ice cream, the peanut butter cup, of course, as you can imagine, it's the chocolate with peanut butter blended in and a nice portion of peanut butter cups inside of it. We also brought back the strawberry cookies and cream. We brought back the Georgian peach cobbler ice cream from 119th Street, our southern sweet potato pecan, the coffee ice cream, mint chocolate chip, and even a peanut butter ice cream. And trust me, for our nice, wonderful, pleasant vegan customers, we thought about you too as well. And we even brought back our delicious homemade vegan ice cream. And trust me, if I put you in front of me and put a blindfold on your eyes, you would not be able to tell the difference between the two. And so we're very, 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 very excited. And we just want you to come and fall in love again. Fall in love again with Sean Michelle's homemade ice cream. Of course, you can find us at 3343 North Broadway. And we can be reached at 773-615-3238. And also at 872-802-4980, once again at 3343 North Broadway. And so we look forward to serving you soon. All right?
Man, that is beautiful. Man, we are very excited. And one just last question as we close out. What keeps you motivated and going to continue to, serve this ice cream and have a business?
Well, I tell you, I think that people deserve the very, very best. And that's my aim. If they made a new cow that had better milk, I would spare no cost at trying to give others what I love for myself. And so I just want to share the experience that I receive when I create that wonderful product for myself. I just want to share with others. And so that's what keeps me motivated. I think that people deserve to have the very best.
Absolutely beautiful. Brother, we thank you for being on the Bean Soup radio show. We thank you for being a sponsor for today's show, and we wish you continued success, and I'll be by soon to
yes,
get
sir.
some of those new flavors.
Look forward to changing. The pleasure's mine. The pleasure's mine. Thank you so much.
All right, you're listening to Intellectual Radio with Toure and Laila Muhammad, and we have an incredible guest in the building right now.
Yes.
Man, we are so excited to have our brother and our friend, student minister Abel Muhammad. Welcome to the Bean Soup Show.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here with you all.
Man, it is our pleasure too, man. So somebody's trying to call me right now. I told you, stop calling me when I'm on the show. So, man, so we got a lot to talk about, man.
Yes,
we are so happy and pleased to have you on the show.
Yeah.
There's a couple of quick news items we wanted to make sure we talked about. One is every year for 26 years. This is the 26th annual African Festival of the Arts, September 4th through 7th. And we're so excited to be a part of this ongoing event. And we have a special guest. They're going to have a special guest this year. Jeffrey Osborne is going to be here to perform.
Yay, both.
Now, y'all familiar with Jeffrey Osborne?
Yeah, a little
bit.
You know, I'm an 80s baby.
You know, he sang On the Wings of Love. Want me to sing a few? On the Wings of Love. You don't remember that song?
Right.
All the way. We're going all the way. Something like that. The words were a little close, but maybe the tune and the harmony was off. But yeah, so we're excited about the annual Festival of the Arts. And there's something great happening with women nowadays, isn't it?
Yes. Actually, the African American women are creating their own businesses at a higher rate than any other female entrepreneurs in the U.S., according to a recent report. The 2015 State of Women-Owned Business Report, commissioned by American Express Open, found the number of businesses owned by Black women has risen 322% in less than 20 years, compared with 40% growth in the number of businesses owned by women who are not minorities. Businesses owned by Asian American and Latino women have grown by 195% and 224% respectively.
Wow, that's great news.
Yeah.
You know, the sisters are going after that money.
Get that money, honey.
That suggests that maybe our women are not putting as much hope and faith in corporate America as they used to.
Right, exactly.
They're walking away from those big time jobs to really go after being a pioneer in business.
And that's why we have to do for self. And we have, Brother Abel here, and that's our doctrine. That's what we preach, do for self.
That's right.
Or suffer the consequences.
That's right.
That's right.
Yes. So, one thing we do, we want to talk. We want to get your feedback on this too, Brother Abel. We started doing the Bean Soup Foodie Challenge, right? And this challenge was we started making a list of restaurants and eateries in our community that were owned by Black people, and may have to expand this. We got to do some Latino businesses too, man, because if I don't go to a Black restaurant, that's my next choice.
Right, because I think I've had dual citizenship in both communities. I grew up, born and raised on the southeast side of Chicago.
Right.
I had graduations in Spanish and English. My first boyfriend name was Felipe, and who do I tell you about? Jorge.
Right.
So
Jorge and Felipe.
I have dual citizenship in both communities, so we definitely, got to get some empanadas and some tostadas. And what, Brother Abel, what's it was this rice thing, our neighbors had. It was like milk and rice or some kind of Spanish dish, maybe.
It might, if it had milk in it, it was probably they make it as a sweet.
Yes.
It's just sweet rice.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Like tapioca or something.
It's
Tapioca
not that
like,
thick, but it's
not that thick.
Because I remember, my neighbor Rosa Marie used to make that for us growing up. I can never find it as an adult, but I remember.
You're not gonna find it in a restaurant. That's homemade stuff right there for real. Yeah. But I grew up on the east side, on by Rainbow Beach, and full confession, I used to try to pretend I was Cuban. I figured I couldn't say I was Mexican because I didn't know the culture enough, but I figured maybe I could slip in. ¿Cómo está, amiga? Man, but for the Bean Soup Foodie Challenge, we wanted to help to support our own economy. So we started talking about Black-owned restaurants.
Right.
And so each time we come to the show, we want to talk about one.
That's right.
And so it's one I didn't get a chance to go to. But my wife went to Batter and Berries, and how was that experience?
Man.
Good. You been there?
Real good.
Batter and
jealous.
Berries is
I'm the only
awesome.
one hasn't been there yet.
Yeah, like my girlfriends Jamila and Kalila took me for my birthday, and oh my goodness, it was the bomb. It was one of the best breakfast brunch restaurants I've ever been to. They had like different varieties of French toast and omelets. And what did you have when you went, Abel? I had that.
I had the chicken and waffles. It's the best chicken.
Oh, you had the chicken and waffles?
I've been to
It's the best chicken and
I've been
waffles?
to Roscoe's in
Right.
California. This is the best chicken and waffles
Oh,
anywhere
man.
on the planet.
Okay.
They have chicken shreds in the waffle.
Woo!
You don't even pour syrup on it.
No syrup.
No syrup.
In the batter.
It's already all
So
in
do
the
you have
batter. The hot sauce is in the batter.
Did you have a second piece of chicken next to it, or was it?
Yeah,
it was
there's
all.
another piece. There's another piece of
But
chicken.
it's in.
Breast
Oh
on
man!
it, but there's shreds of chicken and the hot sauce in the batter.
Wow.
I've never had anything like that.
Wow, that sounds
and the service was excellent, and the food came so quickly.
Really?
And it was like delicious. It was like IHOP meets Gladys and Nice chicken and waffles, but with a little Whole Foods twist. So it was like healthy, fresh ingredients. You can tell nothing came out of a can, and no old grease on grandma's stove. It was fresh and just all natural and very delicious.
Man, that sounds delicious. It's gonna have to be a next stop.
Right.
I need to get that ASAP. I love breakfast food, even though I don't eat breakfast.
Right.
In the morning, I like breakfast food.
Right, and the owners. The owners were awesome. The owners are Chef Derek Ryland, Craig, and Tanya Richardson. And this eatery is open every day of the week from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. So stop by for some brunch, and you will not regret it.
That's excellent. And they're located 2748 North Lincoln Highway here in Chicago, of course. So we apologize for everyone who's not in Chicago right now, who can't get there right now.
Right.
But when you come, stop by Batter and Berries, and you can get more information about them on our website, beansouptimes.com.
Right, and only on Intellectual Radio and Bean Soup Radio can we actually discuss and give shout outs to black-owned businesses. Like I said before, we're not sponsored by Budweiser or Heineken or Milliken or anybody else. So we have freedom on Intellectual Radio to discuss whatever we deem necessary. And
That's
so, Brother
right.
Abel, tell the listeners about how, you guys are men, and men eat. So how big were the portions? Did you have to go back? Did you have to order more?
I couldn't fit any more in. The portions were incredible. The service was incredible. We went on a Saturday morning, which is very busy.
That's right, a busy
but
time.
we got right in and out. The service was impeccable. The beverages, the coffee was delicious. It was me, my wife. I think we went together, and I think on another occasion we took my mother-in-law too, if I remember right. But it's one of those places.
Your mother-in-law enjoy it?
Mother-in-law.
Oh man, you know what's good.
And even if there's a line, it's the kind of place where it's worth staying in line because it's not going to disappoint you.
Right.
It's incredible.
Oh man.
Right, and we know your wife is an excellent cook. So if Sister Ayana said it was good, then I believe her. This sister taught me how to make whipped cream from scratch.
Wow.
That's right.
As a young
it's
Muslim.
good too.
Yeah,
I had your whipped cream. Man, that is excellent. So we're going to get a chance to get by there. And, of course, we want to talk really about, we appreciate you talking to us about the restaurants a little bit. But, we're here to really get some great information from you about what's going on in our community as it relates to Black Latino relations and what we should be doing as a community together. Of course, you are a student minister in the Nation of Islam, and you are just a wonderful representative of the nation, both to our Black community and to the Latino community. One day in the near future, we're not going to have to have distinction when we talk about both communities, because there was no distinction in the beginning, and there won't be in the end. But for people who are surprised to hear that we have members of the Latino community and the Nation of Islam, tell us how your journey to the Nation of Islam.
Mine was, I was introduced to the teachings while I was in high school by a young brother who was a few years ahead of me in school, who was a member of the Nation, and he never tried to preach to me, or as most of us wouldn't have listened when we were in high school anyway. It was just his example. I mean, he was different from the rest of us. He didn't always wear the suit and tie, but he was always dressed proper. We're wearing cardigan sweaters and dressed very neat, slacks or corduroy pants, stuff we didn't wear. We were all wearing jeans and t-shirts every day. And he sat with us at study group, and again, never tried to teach us anything. And it was us, just because he was so different, that started asking him questions. And he gave me the Final Call newspaper to read, because one day I saw it. He had a stack of them on his desk, and it said on the cover, "Treatment for AIDS found in Africa."
Wow.
And I remember the first thought was, because this was the early 90s, AIDS was a huge epidemic. My first thought was, that can't be true, or I would have seen it on the news. So I asked him if I could see it, and I read it, and it was articles from Dr. Alim and other people who had gone to Africa to study the research from scientists. And I remember my mind was blown. I didn't even remember reading much of the other articles that were in it at that time. It was that opened me up, that he was already different. And now I saw another, in high school, it blew me away that there could be other information that I'm not aware of.
Right.
And just based off that, he gave me then How to Eat to Live to read. And that book, it wasn't a religious book. It was a dietary book on how to eat. I started following what it said, and what it said would happen, happened. And my energy level went up, my grades went up, I felt faster, smarter, all of those things.
Wow.
And after reading it, it wasn't so much that I believed in it, it just made sense to me. So I asked him what else he had that I could read, and he gave me Message to the Black Man in America. And after I read that, it blew my mind away. Everything I'd always wanted to know about God growing up were answered in the first 4 or 5 chapters. And after that, I didn't know who Minister Farrakhan was quite yet. I didn't know where or who Elijah Muhammad was quite yet, but I just knew that what I read in there and the effects I saw in him and other people, and through listening to Public Enemy and seeing the FOI there, I wanted that for my community too. And I went into studying it and eventually became a member of the Nation of Islam.
Yeah.
Man, that is so beautiful. And from your experience now, so what year was that?
That had to be between 90 and 91, right around that same frame.
Wow, so 90 and 91. So from your experiences now, were you the first Latino member of the Nation of Islam in the nation?
No, not even in Chicago. I never met them, but there were people in Chicago who, I met one of the brothers later, Brother Arturo, who had been in a young brother in the nation, a Mexican brother. And there was another Brother Miguel that was a young brother, Brother Jose also. They were all before me here in Chicago. And when I first came in, within a month, I met Brother David, who's Puerto Rican, is the assistant minister up in Milwaukee. And I started seeing these connections, but I thought it was recent, that maybe we were the first ones, until I started getting exposed to the history of the nation, and I found out that the presence of Mexicans and Latinos goes back into the 50s, the 40s, even the 30s, and even into Master Fard Muhammad meeting members of the Mexican community up in Detroit. And one of the family members, the Almanza family in Detroit, the Henry Almanza and his wife Mary Almanza, they went to jail and were arrested as some of the first teachers for having their children in the school. So he was Mexican, married to a black woman, and he never came into the temple because he said Master Fard Muhammad asked him at that time not to. And he understood it because he was doing a specific work amongst black people. But later, at a later point, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told him that it was okay for him to join. But out of his respect for never having heard that from Master Fard Muhammad, he never joined, although all his children and his wife were members of the temple. And he believed, the man who he knew as the teacher never told him, so out of respect he never came in. And I found out it was her, Sister Mary, who is the founder, as far as we can tell at this point, of the bean pie from the Nation of Islam, right up there in Detroit. So it's a lot of history that us within the nation and the outer community of the Latin American community doesn't know the interactions that have happened between at that level, and even going into the 50s and 60s where Reyes Tijerina, Cesar Chavez were all great admirers and friends of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Yes.
And even going into the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who continues those friendships, and even historic events like Black Family Day in New York City. Celia Cruz performed at that. Machito performed at that. All Eddie Palmieri performed at that. All of these Latin American icons were there as part of Black Family Day. And as you mentioned, it didn't have to be Black and Latino Family Day. We saw each other as black and as part of the same family, but that has changed in the last generation now.
Right. And so the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan talks about the connection of the indigenous people in North America, the so-called blacks, and the Latino and Hispanics throughout the diaspora. So how did that message resonate with you when you heard from him the different connections?
It was, for me, that was originally my hang-up. Because everything that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad wrote about predominantly mentions black. And only in a few places does he mention Mexico or Latin America in the books. But the first time I heard Minister Farrakhan, he was explaining about Columbus having discovered the Indians here. And he broke down the history on how the Indian people or the native people are indigenous people or original people also. And once I heard that, I didn't still understand all of the history of it, but it was enough for me to know that this was my home too. And ever since that point, I went into digging and have been blessed by having read articles by Mother Tainetta Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with her, and getting to know her children, Brother Student Minister Rasul and Student Minister Ishmael Muhammad in Chicago, and other members of their family who exposed us to what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said in private, or even showed us rare writings of references he made, and that he had a home in Mexico City. So here's the man that really made the language of black popular and acceptable to Black America. Now, why would he go to Mexico? Why would he raise his family in Mexico? And when I started seeing that link, and that he said that one day all of the people of Mexico would be Muslims, I just started to find out what I could do to assist in that process, because I knew I could feel that it was right. I just didn't have the evidence. And once I kept going down the road, I found more and more evidence, to the point where, 17 years ago when I joined the Nation of Islam, it was rare when you went into the Mexican community and told them you're a Muslim. They had all kind of questions. They never heard anything like that before. Now, it's not strange. Every day I'm getting calls from in the cities, in the prisons, across the border, getting emails from Latin America, the Caribbean, for people wanting to find more materials about what the Nation of Islam teaches. So in a short amount of time, you can see that explosion happening, which is leading us really right to 10-10-15, the justice or else, because it's all of our people. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us when everything else fails, when all else fails, then comes Islam. And our people have tried all these different things, education, arming themselves, trying to form their own communities, going after this way of thinking, that way of thinking, this religion, that religion. But what hasn't really touched the Latin American people as a whole yet is Islam as taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan. And now that it's happening, it's not by accident that you see statistics starting to change. Men and women starting to come together in a different way. And also you see then the heat intensifying by our enemy, because they see that as long as we both hold on to the truth, we'll eventually, in spite of the differences that exist, we'll be able to see one another more clearly the longer we hang on to that truth.
And I find it amazing how I think Henry Louis Gates said that the black grandma in the closet, like my friend Randy and Jamila, his grandmother's my complexion. And even though I grew up in this community, I've never really, besides the Puerto Ricans, even really seen someone, of a darkened complexion. But I saw, I think, black and Latin American, black in Mexico. And I found it amazing, the history, that shared history that you're talking about, Brother Abel, that, we come from the same essence, the same root. Your slave masters just stopped in, Cuba or all the other Spanish countries, and ours Brazil and Haiti or wherever else, and ours stopped in here in America. So I find that connection amazing.
It is. Man, you're listening to Intellectual Radio. This is the Bean Soup Show, and we are dropping knowledge. I mean, if you're missing these gems, you wouldn't hear me saying that you're missing them. So be thankful you're listening, and tell somebody to tune in. The show is still going on. So go ahead, brother. You about to say something?
I was about to say, it's interesting because the dynamic in Mexico is different from most of the rest of Latin America and the Caribbean because of the things that took place there. Mexico became isolated from the Caribbean. And also you have Mexico was split in two. So you had the part of the north that was Mexico that became the United States. And they didn't move the people. They simply created a border. So now you had people who had been family for generations. Now grandma is a Mexican and I'm a so-called American. And I can't go see her. And I even learned from our brothers from the Apache tribes, you had the Apaches that were there in those lands. Some of them were left to the north, and the border was then separating them from their relatives to the south. And those same Apaches then began to fight one another based off of the idea that I'm no longer a Mexican or an American or a real Apache. These differences culturally began, and then the enemy sent in buffalo soldiers, which were the black soldiers, who then were fighting the Apache. They didn't have any issue with the native people, but so that it wasn't Caucasian fighting, they sent in black soldiers promising them these are the lands that you could be freed on, when they never intended these to be free land. They were actually trying to make them part of the Confederacy. So they played all of these games, causing now tension between the natives and blacks. Then they had the natives to the north fighting the natives to the south. And if there were wars that happened, from the south, they sent up more soldiers, native indigenous people from other tribes now to fight the so-called Apaches. And when they would get captured, they would then be sent into slavery, but they couldn't leave them in slavery in Mexico because they were too close to their homeland. They would trade them with Cuba. And now black slaves from Cuba came to the border to fight the other Apaches to the north. And the Apaches went into slavery in Cuba away from their own people. And so these are the tensions and the hurt that we didn't impose on one another. And so now these continue to exacerbate the tensions that exist between our people, but they were created tensions because it eliminates the history of the Seminoles. It eliminates the history of the blacks that sought refuge in Mexico because slavery was abolished in 1829 in Mexico. The second president of Mexico was a black man. Well, black and indigenous, but he's a black man. And he destroyed slavery there. He abolished it. So the Underground Railroad didn't have to just go north. It could go south into Mexico. And thousands of black, there's unknown numbers because they didn't want to publicize the numbers. But that's what really causes the American government to go into Mexico and take those lands. Because they wanted to hurt the Mexican people and their black president for making a show that these are human beings, and I don't care what your law says, when they come on Mexican soil, there can't be slaves anymore.
Right.
Man, this is some amazing history that you're giving us. And, you know, this history is so important to be told because as we're talking, it helps us to understand how close and connected we are and show how the enemy comes in, throws a rock and hides his hand.
Exactly.
But then you fast forward to today and you look at what we've been hearing from the streets of what law enforcement does in our communities right now.
Same thing.
Same thing is happening, whether it's black on black, brown on brown, and black on brown.
Exactly.
They're causing the tensions between us to further their own goals.
Absolutely. And you know, the terrible thing is it's allowed to happen because our people on the Mexican side don't know that they have a black presence amongst them. They refer to it as the third root or la tercera raíz, as if it had come later, when the black root is the original root of all of it when you consider Mexico. You know, they make it seem like it's something recent, that it just happened in the last 500 years with slavery, but this interaction, those Olmec heads are older than 500 years.
That's right.
And the other thing that they want us to forget, because you always hear black people saying, well, how come Mexicans are so racist? Well, black people don't like other black people. And we get fed the same thing that you get fed.
That's right.
Mexicans hate other Mexicans because we're taught lies about ourselves. So most Mexicans don't know that they have any black presence, or as you mentioned, they're made to look down upon that black presence in them. So a few years ago here in Chicago, they had the exhibit on the African presence in Mexico. And Mexican people who wear college degrees and came out, they were stunned to see the amount of black African influence that they thought was Mexican culture. It is Mexican culture, but it's just not the way that they thought it was, because we've been taught that black people are just a little small group that came 500 years ago, and there's a few of them that were left in slavery, the rest mixed in or moved, and they're still along the Caribbean coast. No, that's the part that stayed blacker. But there's, according to some of the census records I've read and some of the earliest accounts, when the Spaniards and the Portuguese came, they described the people as black people, not Indian. They described their hairs as those of the African people. There's a difference between the way Indians look and Africans look. If it was only Indians, there's no need to make that distinction. That existence of our knowledge and relationship with one another had been ancient, and it had to be severed. And the way that they did it is they killed off the elders, burned our books, and then fed us their history, which was lies, and then made us believe that history. So whether you're in Mexico or Puerto Rico or Cuba, well, maybe not Cuba because they have a little bit of different system there. But even still, everywhere on the planet, it's infected with white superiority and white supremacy. So we grow up wanting to be lighter.
Come on.
We grow up wanting to hate everything that's brown or black because we don't see any value in it. So just because we cross the border to America, we don't all of a sudden gain value in it now. We have to be taught and educated on who we are and who we are in relationship to one another. And that's going to take time, but it's happening quickly because the time is forcing us into unity, whether we know why or not.
That's right. Man, and that leads us right into the next topic that we want to talk about. because we all are coming together and
That's right.
converging and discussion and talking about our movement to 10 10
That's
15.
Right,
So
right.
talk about your experience helping to make that happen, and the response you've been getting from the people about it.
It's been, for the most part, great. In particular, young people.
Yes.
Young people, you don't need to sell them on the idea. You don't have to convince them of why they need it. All they want to know is, what do I need to do to get there? Because it's in them already. The desire, not just for the unity, but the unity is simple to them because they don't have the same hangups as us. They're not looking at justice or else and asking, well, what's in it for me? That comes from those 50 and older for the most part. But if they're 40 and younger, or 45 and younger, or even like Minister Farrakhan, 82 and thinking young,
Right.
and in tune with that youthful spirit, they don't have those kind of questions. So the response has been great. We had yesterday at our local organizing committee members from the Mexican community, the Puerto Rican community,
Right.
the Native community, and this is happening nationally. So we've been busy all of June and July, and I'll be back in Phoenix again and back in Houston again, speaking to our people and on behalf of our people, because they're all now willing to unify on the basis of justice, because everything else has failed.
Right.
The immigration movement, you haven't heard anything about it because it is dead and stalled, because they're waiting on a corrupt government to give them justice, and they don't have it in them to give it to us. The ending of police brutality, our people, too many of us from Latin America, think that just if you get your citizenship, all the police harassment will stop. And they think like that because they don't have a relationship with black people. Let them speak to black people and ask them, how long have you been a citizen and why are you still treated like you're treated? And they would awaken to the idea that, hold on a second, I'm not being mistreated because I don't have papers. I'm being mistreated because of the way I look.
Right.
And the way I look does not fit into the dominant idea of white supremacy. That is what hurts both of our communities from our lack of relationship, because then there's a deficit in communication, and from that deficit, that void, we fall into the void. And so we're hurt chasing a dream that citizenship gets you rights, when you can talk to black people who've been here longer than everyone, have had that right longer than all the immigrants, and they can tell you in 65 they had to go march to vote. And every year right now, it seems like you got to go back to fight for that right again that everyone else is benefiting from.
Right.
So we have it in our mind, these false hopes and dreams based off lies, because we have been taught that, well, black people are just lazy. They just don't want to get together.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they're criminals. So it's not uncommon. Of course, the police are going to go look after them. But what's the reason that they come and hunt you down on your way to work? And when you start to awaken to that idea and say, well, I was just on the way to work and my back light was out, and they pulled me over and they asked for my papers, and next thing I know, I'm in jail for 6 months. Now I'm deported and my family's still here. I have no legal recourse. Black people understand that reality, and it has nothing to do with your right to citizenship. It has to do with the fact that you represent something that is a threat to the idea that undergirds every system in this nation, which is that white people are superior based off the fact that of their racial identity.
Yes.
That idea of American elitism. Mm-hmm. We think that will be ours if we get a paper that says, I'm a citizen of America. There have been Mexicans here since before and after America was founded, and none of us have the rights that you're looking for, because it's not in them to give it to us. That's why we have to go to justice or else, because we have to do something, as you mentioned, to fix our condition of our people. But there's a government and there's policies in effect that purposely try to create an environment where we can't have what we should have. And based off of that, the only way we can get that is to come together. Because black people are suffering from the division, Latino people are suffering, natives are suffering, Asians are suffering, and even poor white people are suffering. Because we refuse to come together and look at the common hand of the enemy, which is the only common hand, and the common symptoms that are in all of our communities are rooted in that cause.
Right. And so, speaking of that, when we come back, I want to discuss the current edition of the Final Call newspaper, because it has some images of Latinos and indigenous people holding up signs that Black Lives Matter. Right. And also, we want to talk about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan on on the he's bridging not only the indigenous nations, but religious, the Christian and Muslim, and he was on a show with Pastor Jamal Bryan. But after these messages, we want to discuss that recent lecture interview and then the cover of the Final Call newspaper. And only on Intellectual Radio can you have conversations with the black and the brown, so-called brown, bridging the gaps and coming together.
And we're back. This is the Bean Soup Show, and we are here on Intellectual Radio having a powerful conversation with student minister Abel Muhammad. We just asked a important question about our connection, the Christian Muslim connection, and this incredible, powerful conversation that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan had with Reverend Jamal Bryan.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about that. We talked about black and brown. Let's talk about Christian and Muslim.
That's critical, because it's really a false division that is created and fed by those who want to see our people divided. Because when you heard Minister Farrakhan on a Christian network, he talked about Jesus in a way that every Christian that I saw them tweet about it, they were shocked that he knows Jesus like that. Right. But why do they think we don't know Jesus? You can't even be a Muslim except that you believe that Jesus, the son of Mary, is the Messiah. That's in the Quran. So when they won't accept us as friends because they say, oh, they don't believe in Jesus, where's that idea coming from? Because that didn't come out of nowhere. Somebody had to know the truth and then lie about it. And we have to now start coming together and realizing, as they did so beautifully, when you have a young black pastor, and it wasn't just Pastor Jamal Bryant, there was some beautiful other people who spoke and sang and rapped about Jesus, and then a Muslim minister came in and taught them and bore witness to that truth from our perspective, and there was no division in it. All of it for the purpose that, in spite of whatever differences may exist in our religious viewpoint, there's still a basis that we have to unite on, because whether we call ourselves Muslims or Christians or Jews or none of it, our people are dying literally right now. Right. Muslim, Christian, Jews, and those who don't belong to any of those. So what do we look like being divided and saying, well, I'm not going to work with them, because as if any of us is so successful in whatever we're doing that we can claim that our way is better than everyone else's. Right. The best way would show the best results. And if it isn't working in division, the one thing we haven't tried is unity. We've tried praying together. We're going to be fasting together in September. So some of the black Christian clergy have come and asked that we help them in fasting and praying during the month of September for 20 days to end the violence in the city of Chicago as Muslims, Christians, and Jews together, and also so that they can prepare for justice or else. And I got to share this testimony. It was a beautiful pastor, Agi, I believe I'm pronouncing his name correctly. It's either Agi or Agi, that I met a couple of weeks ago. And he shared with me that he was a young pastor at the time. in the church 20 years ago when the Million Man March happened. And it had come down from his church that none of the pastors were to go anywhere near the Million Man March. And he said a 12-year-old boy in his congregation came to him and said, "Pastor, you're going to go to D.C., aren't you?" And he said, "Well, no." And he tried to explain to him why he couldn't. And he said the young boy told him, "But Pastor, you have to go. All of our people are going to be there. You have to be there." He said he didn't go because he didn't want to break. He was young. He wasn't the pastor over the church, so he went along with the decision of the church. He said it was the biggest regret he ever had in his life. And now he's so happy that 20 years later, he has his own congregation. And he's not in any denomination that he has to ask for permission, so he can organize the men and women of his church now to make it up, because he said it was a 12-year-old boy who taught him. If this is about bettering our people, regardless of who's organizing it or what I perceive our differences are, if the call is good, how can I not be there for the good of our people to contribute to it? And today, 20 years later, you have Minister Farrakhan, who's addressed so many college campuses, so many young churches also, that people were coming up on. Now you see the fruit of that coming out, because you have pastors, as those we've met here in the city of Chicago and that we work with, who aren't limited to a denomination or a philosophical ideology. They're willing to work with the Nation of Islam, with Hebrew Israelites, with anyone who wants to get out in the streets and try to end the violence. That's the spirit that's been missing. That's real unity. That's real Christianity. That's real Islam. And you can't be a Christian or a Muslim unless you want for your brother what you want for yourself.
Yes.
And that's what's been missing. We've been wanting to do it our way at the cost of the lives of our people. And finally, I think we've come to the realization that the main focus has to be the people of God, and everything else can be in spite of that. Let's reach out and hold hands in spite of us being Muslim and Christian. How much stronger does it look to the brothers in the street that we can stop religious gangbanging, as Reverend Bryant said so wonderfully? He said it from that broadcast. He said when he was going to go announce the truce of the Bloods and the Crips in Baltimore, he said, I can't go out there without going with my Christian family, with my Muslim family, with my Jewish family, because how can I tell them to end the bloodshed? And we're Christian gangbanging, Muslim gangbanging, religious gangbanging. And that's what has to stop. And I think we're finally, because of circumstances, maturing into that idea.
Yes,
that's absolutely right.
Right. And it's amazing. Like you said, Brother Abel, the police, once they pull you over, they're not going to say, well, I'm a Christian,
Right.
so don't give me, or, well, here's my fancy pedigree education. No, what they see is black, Latino, and poor whites, and mainly black and Latino, and they don't care about your religious, about your education, anything. And so, Brother Abel, where were you 20 years ago?
I was in D.C. I was not I was not a member of the Nation of Islam registered yet, but I believed, and we went with a group of brothers from a halfway house. Me and another Mexican brother, my friend Oscar, who is still lives here in the city, and I'm hoping to reach out to him so he could make this trip 20 years later with me. But he's a beautiful brother, and we went and we saw other Mexican and some native brothers there. But the only thing that was, to me, the most impactful day on my life was being at the Million Man March.
Wow.
Because ever since that day, my idea has been, I didn't have children yet, but in my mind, I said, I want my children to grow up knowing that spirit. I want my wife to be able to live in that spirit of what was created on that day. And if you weren't there really is no way to explain it to somebody. It was literally peace everywhere you looked.
That's right.
I saw grown men who, if you saw them on the block, you'd cross the street. And they would cry and they would give you dap and hug you. You don't even know what part of the country they were from. You don't know what they did. It didn't matter. I went with a group of brothers from a halfway house, and they were fighting over bologna on the way there, because they gave them food to make sandwiches with. And one of the brothers took 2 slices of bologna, so somebody else had no bologna. And they literally got into a fist fight about bologna on the way to the Million Man March. On the way back, it was a totally different spirit.
Wow.
These men were changed from the experience. They were sharing food. Not everyone had money. Well, let's stop and get this. The tire broke down. Nobody had an issue about it. Gotta wait for the other bus to come.
Wow.
And everybody's spirit was so tranquil. One brother who was on his way there, he stayed there because he found his family in DC. He didn't come back to Chicago with us.
Wow.
He stayed there because he found members of his family, and they know he had just gotten out of prison. They're like, you stay with us.
Wow.
And I ask my husband all the time because, I was a teenager, 20 years ago, and, it was for men, but I can remember on the south side of Chicago seeing the signs and seeing the brothers walk. And I asked him, I said, so what happened? How was it? It's like you said, you can't really explain it. But, Toure, what did you tell me about when the minister sent the brothers to different organizations when you said he didn't tell everyone to go join the mosque?
Oh, right. That's right. Well, he told people, I mean, you got 2 million. Of course, some people said not even a million, but we saw the numbers. 2 million black men were there, and they were all there to hear from the minister.
That's right.
There was at one point, because there was so many speakers who came before the minister. Some of them just came at the last minute. Some of them took liberties and took longer to speak than they were given. But at a point, the people were fed up. The brothers were like, this was the most tension that was there. Everything was so peaceful. But at one point, they said, listen, we want Farrakhan. We want Farrakhan. All they wanted to hear was from the minister. So when he came, now he has this kind of presence, this kind of people, this kind of group that wants to hear from him. And he could have said, everybody, meet me at 7351 South Stony Island and we'll get this together. But he said, I want you all to go back and join an organization of your choice, a church, a mosque, a synagogue. He said, join an organization or a religious institution and help to make it better. And let's work to get our people together. There was another piece that just my personal sight experience. There was a brother who had an expensive camera. I mean, he had lenses. He had 3 or 4 cameras. He had all kind of stuff. And he had a little son with him. His son was maybe, 4 or 5 years old. At some point, his son had to go to the bathroom. And the brother didn't know how he was going to get his son to the bathroom because we were really shoulder to shoulder. And do you know, he left. The brother said, your camera be all right. You can leave it here. He left. It had to be at least $3,000-$4,000 worth of equipment. He left the equipment right there on the ground, took his son to the bathroom and came back, and nothing was touched.
Wow, what manner of man is
With 2
this?
million black men around, nothing was touched. And that story, there were similar incidents where people were leaving stuff or lost something, and somebody found it, it got back to them.
Yes, we have to take this to social media, and all of our listening audiences, tweet us with the hashtag Bean Soup Radio and let us know, where were you 20 years ago? If you were at the Million Man March, or if you weren't, if you watched it from TV like me and my sisters did, but where were you 20 years ago? And are you coming back? And so that leads us into the minister. He is crisscrossing this country, Brother Abel. I can't keep up. He's 82 years old, and he's in Miami, and he's in DC and Detroit, and he's going to Milwaukee. He was in St. Louis, where I used to live. And so tell us about Miami, where it's a strong Latino Hispanic population.
I wasn't blessed to be there with him, but Sister Yonajdaha Lone Wolf, who is we're co-conveners for the Latino and Native presence, has been on many of the stops with the minister, and she was in Miami, and the minister had private meetings with the Latino and Native leadership, and the response has been just like everyone else. People are ready for the call. There will always be naysayers. There will always be that, but overwhelmingly, these are people who understand the purpose of the call. And what we have to remember is, even before the Million Man March 20 years ago, in the last generation, there are no events like that.
Right.
You got to go back to Dr. King, over 50 years ago now.
That's right.
Going to D.C. From 95 this way, and even just 95 stands out. There is nothing that has happened like this. And like you mentioned, all of these people who were born in the last 20 years, they don't even know about the Million Man March or Dr. King's March. There's nothing to compare it to. And the spirit of this is so different that it's appealing to people regardless. I've had Caucasian people ask me, how can they help organize? Because they see the need for this, that truth. The time is right, and the people, regardless of their color, their background, their ethnicity, they're longing for that truth because we've been too long in a world of lies.
Yes.
And I think the circumstances now with social media, you could hide it in the past. If you didn't want to know what was going on, turn off the TV, and I don't even have to watch the news. Today, it's on your news feed, it's on Facebook, it's on Yahoo, it's on Twitter, it's on Instagram. You cannot avoid it.
That's right.
And it's raising a different type of consciousness in people and anger in people.
Yes.
So the minister is really fighting to channel that anger into a productive format versus what could be the option.
Right.
That's right.
And that's really what you saw in Miami. And even this morning, Minister Farrakhan was at Reverend Clay Evans' church. So he's not taking days off. It's not like just because we don't see him out of the city, he's at home kicking his feet up. He's working from literally can't see morning to whenever. We're all asleep and he's still working and thinking and writing and answering tweets and organizing and planning the logistics of this mobilization.
That's right.
Everyone should go to justiceorelse.com.
That's right. We have mobile apps.
Mobile apps. You can download it onto your phone.
That's right. Android.
You can spread the word and make a donation of some kind, because this is not going to happen from osmosis. It's just not going to appear out of the air and all of a sudden there's all of these things that are required for that day. We've had experiences with the marches in the past, but the key to this whole mobilization is to realize that it's not a march.
Come on.
It's not an event. It's a sacred gathering from which we will make a demonstration of our intention to be united and to work together towards justice after 10/10/15. So we're already planning the meeting for 10/11.
Right.
Now talk a little bit about, because that's an excellent point. So the ministers talked about something that he wants to have take place the day after Thanksgiving.
That's right.
Which he's going to talk about on 10/10.
Right.
Talk about that
I'll say it because he said it. If we're going to present to this government our grievances, and if they don't respond appropriately, then he said we have to do as Dr. King wrote and redistribute our pain of the injustices. And we'll do it constructively by hurting them where it seems that the only thing that matters to them is the checkbook and pocketbook. Right. So we're going to ask our people, if the government will not answer our request for justice, our grievances, and respond appropriately, then we're going to boycott, starting with what they call Black Friday.
Yes.
No black dollars for Christmas. Make it a white Christmas. Let's see how long they survive with only their white dollars in their bank. And we don't go buy anything to support that. It's really a ratchet holiday the way it's turned out now.
Right.
People go drink more on that day. There's parties now on that day. And what we want is to turn it back into a holy day, that we honor the birth of Jesus the Christ, and that we take our money that we work hard for and stop giving the credit to a fat Caucasian.
Right.
And leave that in ours. And we're going to ask not only black people, we're going to ask poor white people. We're going to ask all of those of good conscience who could support justice or else. Let's hit them where it hurts.
Right.
It doesn't hurt them that we go and pray. It doesn't hurt them that we go and protest. What hurts them is if we withhold our money, which they've survived off of. They make their year on Black Friday.
That's right.
And then continue to create injustices for us the rest of the year. And we go back every time and keep giving them our money. Why? See, this is where we can turn Black Friday into a day where we don't go support Christmas. Black Friday, we only buy black that day.
That's right.
Now, how strong would that be? And we'll only support those black businesses that are supporting our call for justice or else. Because if you're not, then you're no better than the Caucasians who are taking our money anyway.
Right.
So it has to be a real movement of the people, and we get the support of Mexican people. We get the support of Puerto Rican people. We get the support of Cubans, and let them see what is it to be a day without the Mexican dollar, a day without the black dollar, a day without the dollar of the oppressed and the despised and the rejected. Since you don't want us, well, fine, don't take our money either then. And if we can mobilize for that, and we will mobilize for that, that would be a shot.
Man, that's powerful right there. I love it. I'm so glad to be a part of it. Reverend Pastor Jamal Bryant said something after the broadcast that was so incredible. He said that he is not ever going to have a Christmas tree in his house ever again.
That's right. That's right.
Wow, that's amazing.
And again, it's education.
That's right.
Most of our people, if you ask them why they got a Christmas tree, why they got Santa Claus, they couldn't even tell you.
That's right.
My mom showed me how. Mexico, they don't have no Santa Claus and Christmas trees. That happens when we come to America. And now it's spreading from America, but that's not our normal way. You know, in Mexico, they celebrate what's called El Día de los Reyes, which is the Three Kings Day. They celebrate the day that the kings were supposed to come and bring the gifts to Jesus. So you get 3 days of gifts. So it's different. It's different. It's still more spiritually based, but we don't want any of those things to be feeding those who are our oppressors and who aren't investing back into our community. That's the objective here.
Man, that's powerful stuff. Brothers and sisters, this is Intellectual Radio. You're hearing it right here, right now, today on the Bean Soup Show with student minister Abel Muhammad. I'm your host, Toure Muhammad, my co-host, Laila Muhammad, and we are having some great conversation. So let's talk a little bit more about what that day should look like. Justice or else, describe some of the things the minister has said that he wants to have happen on that day.
And I'll start with actually the 9th. Because the 9th of October, we plan on having a sacred ceremony right on the grounds of the National Mall, bringing together what you call the medicine men and the spiritual healers from the tribes, from the churches, from the mosques, from all of our communities, to come that day on the 9th and prepare the grounds for the people, to set the tone as a spiritual tone, because this battle is a real battle, but we're not fighting with carnal weapons. It's a battle of the minds and hearts of the people. So they're coming and they're going to bring teepees. They're going to bring different sacred rituals that we do to smudge the area, to smudge the people who will be speaking, so that we can cleanse the body physically as a sign of what should be going on in our hearts. So what we plan to do on that 9th is have a mass ceremony on the mall. It doesn't matter what your religion is, all of them will be welcome. All the heads of the spiritual faiths, all of the heads of the tribes who are spiritual leaders, they will all have something to offer to prepare the people and the grounds for the people as they come. We will then, from that on the 10th, move to have a serious tone. We don't want partying. We're not there to barbecue. We're not there to go and visit the monuments and take tours. That's not the purpose. When we're going for justice, as I just mentioned, the spiritual men are going to consecrate the land to prepare for the sacred body of men and women who will come, because we're going there to offer our lives if necessary. So that's a different tone. It's very similar to the tone 20 years ago, but it's different from the tone of the Million Family March and the Millions More movement. They were serious, but this is life and death serious now. And if the minister's words have been these, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, if you're too afraid for the or else, then just stay at home and watch it on TV.
Yeah.
And we're looking for 10,000 fearless who are willing. We don't have a suicide mission. No, none of us want to die. We all have children and families and now a purpose for living. But what's the point of that life if we're going to live subjugated to tyranny? Exactly. So we have to make up our minds and go there and offer ourselves as a willing sacrifice if needed. Because the enemy does not desire and has done everything to force division between us. And in spite of that, we're coming together anyway. There's going to be opposition. So we have to go there with a sound mind and a pure heart, knowing that we don't go to fight. We're not going to pick a fight. We're going to stand for justice. Right. And then we fight with those who fight with us. We're not looking for a fight. There's no desire on any of us to fight. Some of us are bringing our children and our wives, but our wives have to be willing to lay down their lives.
Right.
Our children have to be willing to lay down their lives. And only when we've gotten to that point will we be free. That's what you see in Palestine. That's what happened here in America when they were fed up with the presence or the lack of justice coming from the king of England. Then it got to the point where, what's the point in my child living as a slave? What's the point of my daughter growing up in a world where she's going to be subjugated and treated as a thing rather than a human being? What, as a father, as a mother, why do you want to leave a world like that for them? And at a certain point, we have to go stand. And this is that time. What you saw in Baltimore, in Ferguson, and what you're going to see happening in Texas and California and in Miami, it's a sign of things to come. We can either leave destruction or life for our children. But it's going to cost us one way or the other. This is an opportunity to stand for life.
That's right. So beautiful. As the minister, I'm paraphrasing, mentioned on the show on the Word Network with Jamal Bryant, he said that, you have a dentist in hiding because he killed a prize African out of lion out of Africa.
Right.
But Darrell Wilson and the one who killed Trayvon Zimmerman, and the killers of Sandra Bland and all of our loved ones are walking around free.
Right.
So what does justice look like? We have to be there in D.C. for justice or else. 10, 10, 10. Brother Abel, student Miss Abel Muhammad, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
It's been my
man,
honor.
we thank you, man.
Thank
You
you
brought
both.
some light to the show today, and we hope that people get it and take it to their into their hearts and meet us in D.C.
That's right.
Because we will be there. This is Toure Muhammad.
And Laila Muhammad. And remember, spend with your brother before you spend with another. And it's easy to buy black, but it's easier not to.
That's right. That's right. And as long as I have a bowl of bean soup, you got half.